Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Can you guess what I'm going to do next? If you've been with me for a little while, you would have watched me make this postcard wrap where I used a selection of bits and pieces from my recent trip to Paris, where I went on a textile tour. I'll link the series below the playlist so you can follow my adventures, where each episode I just showed videos and photos and stories and memories of what I experienced in Paris. So places like Versailles and look, the list just goes on and on. The food we ate, just the adventures we had. So I've worked through this project, and at the end of each episode is the photos and videos that I took while in Paris. Now, you'll probably hear me mention in the series that I would like to do a Japanese rice bag. This one here was in a project. Let me go up a little bit. It's right in your face, isn't it? A Japanese rice bag dedicated to that trip. Now, I love the wrap. It's on a shelf, tucked away, and not really seen, as well as a bag that would be on my craft desk. So the plan is to use similar concepts. I've got a few new ideas that have been tossing around in the back of my little pea brain, but similar ideas to create a Japanese rice bag based on the one we did in a series as well. I'll link that as well down below. But themed with all the treasures and bits and pieces that I got from the trip. I think it's going to go more to the lace. I really only put little bits and pieces of lace on this project, so I would love to explore more of those treasures. And in there, on one of the fabrics, was a paper label. It was actually two, and I worked it into the piece. One of those laces in my stash from France has the manufacturer's label. It's still stapled together as like a hank, as if it's never been opened and used. So I think I'll use that piece of ephemera on my Japanese bag. So let's get started. So in the description below, if you're interested, is this project. It's a fabric slow stitched wrap that has a big long pocket that holds postcards, maps, tickets, anything you may collect from a holiday. So I'll just put that to one side for now. Now, Japanese rice bags. Also linked below will be the series where I make this Japanese rice bag. Well, my version of it. There's quite a few creators out there that make them more traditional, where, for example, this side seam would be neatly inside between the lining and the outside. So, you know, when you put right sides together and you stitch something and then you open it up and the seam is hidden, that's what most of the YouTube videos that are in this series that I refer to do. But for something a little bit different, I decided to clad mine plus make it a little bit stiffer so that it stands on its own accord and is just somewhere where I can store things. Like, if anything, my craft room, oh my goodness, I just need things to put things in, things to put projects in, scraps from projects. So in here are all of the fabrics that I've collected and the bits left from this project to do with Japan and indigo dyeing and things like that. So it sort of becomes a bit of a vessel, I guess, for themes. So therefore, the outside can be a theme. And as I mentioned in the making of the postcard wrap, that I can see a French-themed Japanese rice bag. Does that make sense? I hope you're following me. Anyway, when I made the Japanese one, I preempted the fact that I would be making more. So in the process of creating the lining, which is that, I literally cut out 2 extra. I think it was 2. Yeah, I did 3 in total. So while I was on the sewing machine, I stitched the bag together, So that's the lining. And I used a firm canvas type calico, but I believe it's been washed. I picked it up at a recycling fabrics place, and it sort of felt like a lot of the starch had gone. When I've seen this for sale down at my local fabric stores, it's really firm, which I've always avoided it, because if I was to stitch into it, I think it would put wear and tear onto my already worn and torn fingers. So when I saw this big piece, I grabbed it because I thought, oh, that doesn't feel like what I've been looking at. And then I started thinking it had been washed. So when I cut out my pattern, now my pieces, just to recap ever so slightly, but I'm not going to go into the full construction of the bag in this series. Go to the Japanese one, because that's when I go step by step by step of exactly how I make it. And like I said, I mentioned that there are other makers of these bags that do them in a more traditional way, especially the ones that are very soft-sided, so they literally collapse on your desk with all this beautiful fabric, and you could have a project inside. So my bag is 6.5 inches by 6.5 inches, a square. You can make it any size you want. If you've got a shelf that maybe could handle an 8-inch bag, well, you might want to do 8 inches by 8 inches. At the moment, this is my preferred size, but I can see these in the future. If I ever get to do some more classes or textile tours, these bags are going to be in my craft room as nearly a piece of history of my journey of stitchery. So if I think of a theme or an event that I attend and I'd like to showcase what I learnt, these bags are going to be it. So if I do a little stitchery in a lesson somewhere, and it's, instead of it just sitting in a cupboard, they're going to be worked into a project like this. Plus I then get somewhere to store stuff. What can I say? Isn't that just worth the effort? So I have 3 bag potentials, 2 of which are still waiting for a concept. French, here we go. So now I also have pre-cut with some wadding attached, because I really want that stiffness so the little bag stands, a heap of the panels. So you will need 5. Let me get the lining up again. 1, 2, 3, 4 opportunities to embroider, and 1 for the bottom. In the case of the Japanese bag, I just did a simple running stitch over a piece of denim. So really simple. I didn't think it was worth doing too much to the bottom of the bag. So it was just a basic piece of fabric with basic stitching, but you can do whatever you like. So where was I at? The plan is to embellish 4 of them and then attach them to the exterior of this lining that I pre-prepared. Okay, and I'm going to use the same principle as the Japanese one and just stitch them on. I'm not going to create a seam around the outer edge. Does that make sense? And that came about because when I started stitching, I just didn't want to lose the real estate that you would disappear into the side seam. So if that was connected there like that with a, now what was the seams I had? 1/2 inch seam. Now you could use 1/4 inch. You can do whatever size seam you want. But if that was stitched there, when that opened up, yes, my raggedy seams would be enclosed, so the bag would have more of a finer look, but that's now lost 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, so I just don't want to lose that real estate. So I made a decision very early on in the making of the Japanese one that I would have this rough edge. Okay, having said all that, let me put everything away. Now, if you remember the postcard wrap, there was this beautiful flower on the cover. Where is it? That's it there. This piece of fabric was a strip this wide and it had 3 of these flowers, 2 of which I've kept to one side, and this particular piece has this very old fringing on the bottom that I plan to somehow include in my, look at that, the colour fading. So it was very yellow in its day. Look at that. Oh, you can't really see. Oh, you can. Look at that side. Look. So I've got sidetracked already. What was I saying? So the flowers, yes. Now, two of the flowers are in full view like this. And this flower was at the very top of the panel and was missing the top of it. So I disguised it with this lace drifting down onto the flower and just did the embroidery just a little bit. But I really enjoyed it. So what I want to do is work this piece in a similar fashion, and then that'll give me all sorts of morsels around it. Like these flowers, when I did this postcard wrap, these flowers were just screaming to me to have something done. I don't know what yet, but they're here and they're up here. So my Japanese rice bag with the influence of France is going to be based on this fabric. And I just noticed there's a tiny little line of stitching here, tiny little hem. So if I turn it over, look, so in there is more fabric that I can utilize in my project. So that's an adventure to be had. Okay, I think that's all I really wanted to say. Like I mentioned, the playlist to make the Japanese bag in its entirety will be in the description. So go over there if you're new to my channel and you're like, what the hang is this girl talking about? Head over there and have a little look. If you want to see the process of the postcard holding fabric slow stitched wrap, it's a bit of a mouthful. The playlist will also be below. All right, guys, I'm just itching to get into this. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, when I created these patches for the side of any future bags, I took the felt that I used right to the very edge of my square. But I've just sat here and I've cut it back a little bit. Now, this particular bag, I don't really want the white wadding popping through. It worked really well with this bag because it sort of suited the colours. But this one, I don't want to have that. So before I turned on the camera, I just trimmed back. So if you were with me in the beginning of the series, you may have pre-prepped a few of these. Well, I'm going to trim it back this time because I've had an idea about using this space to have some lace peeking out. So the side of the bag could have a very fine lace sneaking through. So I just want to nibble that back a little bit to allow me to see. I've got some, I went through and also tacked this down, and I did it quite close to the edge. So I've sort of had to, where's my quick unpick or pokey tool? I've had to pull out that thread and so that I can access to trim this back a bit. And I'm going to take it back about 1/4 of an inch, I think. That just gives me plenty of room. I don't want the lace that I put in there to be bumping into it, especially if it's got a bit of depth to it. Admittedly, I could probably lay the lace over this, but it might create a bit of extra bulk that's probably not needed. So I'm just going to remove my tacking that held those two surfaces together. It's so good having these pre-prepared. Just cut a heap of them, pop them in a box, and then whenever you think, oh, that would be a nice theme for a container on your desk, a slow stitched piece, you can pull it out. Now, I have removed all my stitching, so I'm just, actually I'll pin it from behind. Just to hold it for a moment so it doesn't slither around, and I really should tack it because I'm going to be manhandling this and it's going to shimmy. It's just what it does. So I'm going to reinstate my tacking so that it stays put. This time, instead of going around the outer edge, I might just run straight through the center across. Gee, that white is very bright. I just glanced up to the TV, which shows me if my hands are on the right spot for you guys to at least see what I'm up to. And that white looks so white. So I'm just going to do a diagonal line just to reinstate that stability. You probably don't need to, but I know I tend to get, you know, squishy with my fabrics, if that's such a technical word, and it will move. So I'm going to do it now before I get to the end and realise that the wadding is an inch too far over, hanging off the side. So as for the panels, I'm not sure exactly what each panel will have yet. I know my category of fabrics. I know the design is going to be very floral and there's going to be a lot of lace. So what I will do, I think, is we will prep the panel. I'll talk through what I'm thinking of doing. We'll have a little play and then I'll go away and finish that panel, and then we'll start another panel as we work through the French influence on this particular project. There we go. That's pretty good. Now I do have put aside, because when I did the Japanese one, it was sort of burning in my head, a French one, and I hadn't yet gone to France, and I really didn't know what I would find, but I had put aside these fabrics and they just match beautifully. Whether I use them or not, I'm not sure. I might need, say for example, the base could be one of these fabrics and then just, you know, running stitch through the whole base. But they match beautifully. French General is the name of this pack, and there's a heap of them. That French General is the design of these packs. Then there's individual names, but if you type into Google French General fabric packs, you will see quite a few years worth of their designs. Now, in addition, I have some little elements here that I didn't stitch when I was working with a panel also by French General. And all of this was used on my Henrik the Hare. Now, Henrik the Hare, where is he? He's not even in the room. He moves around the house, that rabbit. He is a pattern by Leslie Pearson, who is in the UK, and he used Scrappy Rabbit, this hare, together, and he's huge. So between a collaboration with Susanna from Vintage Blend Studio, hang on one moment, I created Henrik the Hare. I might as well put that package below as well in the description so that you know what I'm talking about, and especially if you love this sort of color scheme. Susanna did a completely different looking hare, and they're just gorgeous. We both have this panel. Now this is also a French General panel. We've been racking our brains of a collaboration we could do using the rest of this panel. So I nibbled this piece out, but there's still bonjour, merci, and then there's like a sampler here. So we haven't yet come up with a brilliant idea. We're still thinking. Susanna's still traveling, so she hasn't quite got back to the land of Oz yet, but we have plans of doing something with that panel. And these are some of the pieces that I prepped thinking they might make it to the rabbit. So I've got these up my sleeve as well that I could potentially work into this whole project, but we'll see. They might end up going towards a project with Susanna yet. I'm just not sure. So I've got that, and I've got some spare fabrics. So they're so similar. It's like you can see how this company are so inspired. Like even those little shapes and those little shapes just works together beautifully. So it's lovely to have this pack, but it's also has been absolute delight to be able to go there and get vintage fabrics of a similar, age. Not age, a design is what I'm trying to say. Okay, enough rabbiting on. I just want to get into this flower. So, size-wise, it's perfect. So I think what I need to do is let's get the flower positioned to where we think it is best displayed. It's such a beautiful piece. I wonder if I should have a look at the other one just to make sure it's the right one to use. When I look at that piece, I see that in its entirety, just gorgeous. So I grabbed my pile of French fabrics. I've been so tidy and tidied it up, and now I'm ripping into it. I'm trying not to make a mess, but I know, there it is. I know, so I'm trying very hard not to mess it up. Look at this flower. Okay, I know I wanted to include this braid, but I'm now of the opinion that that piece, just like that, is too beautiful to cut. Look, I've got the flower. Doesn't quite cover where I want it to cover, but that's okay. We can deal with that. I'm going to put this piece back, guys. I just can't cut into it yet. Another day you will come out, my beautiful friend. Pop that away. That braid, I might go looking for it yet, but I probably don't need to. I've got so much lace that came back. I think I've got enough. So I guess the question is, how do we position this? Because it's a little bit short. I'm thinking we square it up to that corner there. That could be trimmed back, and this edge, we'll go looking for a piece of lace to go along that bottom edge, is what I'm thinking. Or do we bring the piece down and we put lace at the top edge? So that means there would be this tuft of lace coming along the top edge of the bag. I sort of like that idea. I like that idea a lot, actually. And I could put it in behind there. Yeah. I think that's what I'm going to do, guys. Just thinking. You know how it goes. Got to think. It's half the fun. Now I could do with invisible stitching this down so that it stays attached. I need to grab my cotton. I know I'm so organised today, aren't I? Here we go. This cotton I've got on my desk at the moment, I grabbed it out thinking it was this a couple of days ago, but it's really, really coarse. I used to use it when I was quilting. It's a beautiful, strong cotton that you would use to hand quilt a quilt. 100% cotton. for quilting. Yeah, it's a quilter's cotton. And I haven't had it out for years. And I raced over to my cotton reel stand, grabbed it thinking it was this. And then when I sat back down, I'm like, oh, gee, you're coarse. But for general basting or tacking down, you don't need anything as heavy duty as that. Now I might just, see I've got excess over here, I'm just going to pull it over a little bit, because when you stitch, your fabric tends to creep in, especially, you know, you start pulling in there with stitches, you'll lose a little bit of edge. So I'm going to just pull it down a fraction, not by much, but just a little bit. Let's put a pin in there. See, already just putting the pin in, I can see I've pulled this corner up. So you've got to be a little bit careful. Okay. So let us begin just with a few little invisible stitches. That's so invisible it actually came through. Goodness me. I won't go all the way up to that edge so that I can tuck a lace in if I want. Now I'm going to do my invisible stitches, which is, you know, a tiny stitch on the top and a decent jump across underneath. I'm going to do them reasonably close together because I want that quilted look across the panel. It'll take a little time, but I'm just going to do a few now, and then when I go off to do some embroidery, I will definitely continue that, tacking it down. Now the other thing we'll do is work out our threads. Now the thread I used in the original piece, which was the postcard wrap, was DMC red, and it was probably still kicking around because it's one of those go-to favorites. I know I use this beautiful gold thread. Definitely want to use some of that again. It worked up beautifully. I'm still on the hunt for some. Oh, that potentially has potential. Potentially has potential. There it is. I knew it was close by. That. So that's a definite. I'd be pretty confident I'm going to do some beading, especially in around that stamen. Like that has got great potential in there. Very fluted looking piece. I would have done more work on the postcard wrap with that panel at the time, but I just could see another project, if not numerous, and I really wanted to explore the flower to a great degree. So whether the flower that I kept aside, the one with the braid on, that becomes a project in the future that I really go to town on, and this one is sort of the next level up from the postcard wrap, so I sort of get to work it again, but in more depth. I don't know when that'll happen. You know, it might be one of those pieces that I pick up in 2 years' time and work it again, and having learnt even more in those 2 years. Well, you hope you do, don't you? You do. You pick up different things, don't you? That I might do a completely different interpretation of the same flower, which would be quite interesting. So I'm not too concerned if that flower disappears into the stash and pops up one day in my life. I so would like to make for my craft room a mood board. Now, a space that I can attach snippets of things. I remember in art class, we would make mood boards. Now, I did uni to be a primary school teacher, and I didn't end up finishing the course because I fell in love, got married, got a mortgage, decided that teaching children was not what I wanted to do, and about halfway through my course, I walked off into the sunset. Not to mention this, the university also said at the end of your course you probably won't have a job because we took so many teachers in and there's not enough positions. Heaven forbid these kids go through these courses only to find out that there's no work at the end of it. Ludicrous. It's still happening. Happened to my cousin Maddie. She trained as an ambulance driver, and they pushed out a heap of these young students ready to go, and there's seriously not enough trucks, let alone hospitals, to even have these children employed. Well, they're not children, young adults employed. So Maddie has gone with 25 other unemployed, fully trained ambulance folk to the UK and is working I think it's a 3-year contract in the UK. So here, my story is, 35 years ago? And it happened to me. I got a letter just before the halfway point of my course saying there won't be any jobs. If there are, you'll need to go regional, and it'll be the highest scoring folk will go first out into placements. And I was doing okay. I was passing, but I now was married with a mortgage, and I was like, well, what if I don't get a job at the end of this? So I decided to defer it, which was an option. You could defer the training for 10 years. So I elected to do that. And then in 10 years' time, I could come back and finish the degree and become a school teacher, because they would assume that there might be some positions available. And being a mature age student by then, you would definitely get a place because, you know, you're not a young person. So that was the end of my teaching degree. It sort of was a blessing because when I got out into the classroom to do some practical teaching, I soon realised that, yeah, it may not be for me. I probably should have been a secondary teacher and specialised in art, and back then we used to call it home economics, so that I could be creative all day and I could also be working with adults. So in hindsight, I probably chose the wrong path, but it was a good experience. You know, I got to have a taste of the university life, and it sort of helps you grow, doesn't it? I think that's half of university and college, is it just helps young people to find their way. So that's my higher education. In the process of leaving the university, I took up a job in the retail sector, and well, it wasn't technically retail, it was with a video chain. Blockbuster Video was coming to Australia and they did a big recruitment. So I was one of about 30, maybe even more, I'm not officially sure of the exact figures, that were hired, and within 2 to 3 years they had plans to open, 30 odd stores. So that's where I found myself. It was just a casual job. It was a bit of extra cash while I found something more meaty, and I was just getting the odd shift here and there. But within 12 months I was a store manager, and within another 6 months of that I was the state district manager. So absolutely loved it, and I believe that's where I fell in love with business. That's when I realised that business was for me. I just really enjoyed working with adults. I enjoyed the understanding of business. I should have studied a bit more business in my study time, but there's no quicker way to learn than on the road. So I ended up having quite a lot of stores under my belt. I was partnered with another district manager, but she ended up going on to something else, and I ended up just having all the stores. Then slowly the demise of video came as video on demand happened. So and most of the stores started getting sold off too. I think they knew the writing was on the wall, so they sold the businesses off. And I decided to move on, but it was only because one of my store managers, he moved on to another company as a franchise manager. And he actually gave us a call, hubby and I, and said, hey, I've got a store that's for sale, and the old owner is moving on and we haven't been able to sell it. So, you know, are you guys interested? Because it'd be a great opportunity. It's very under-serviced, as in, you know, energy, fresh smile. So we went and had a look at it and, yeah, decided to take the jump. And that was our first business experience, if you will, where we bought into a franchise group and had a whale of a time. So we ended up opening a second store. The first one was an existing store that we purchased, and the second store within 12 months was a brand new build. So that was a lot of fun. We then got an offer we couldn't refuse and sold the two businesses. And both of us, hubby and I, because my husband quit his job as well to dive boots and all into this new adventure, both of us went on to work for the parent company. My husband was training new franchisors, and if they had a store that the franchisee, for whatever reason, decided to hand the business back to the parent company, my husband would go in and run it until a solution was found, whether it was sold or closed or whatever the situation was. And in the process, he would also train new franchisors coming into the system. So he was like the man on the ground in Queensland for new people joining. And I went on to work a little bit with head office in the way of training existing owners to improve their business. So little sales techniques that could be, look at that, that could go that way, could go this way, could go that way. Anyway, sidetracked. So yeah, that was, I guess, our launch into business. So do I regret not becoming a school teacher? Not at all. I have some friends that did continue on and have gone on to be teachers, and it's been tough. It's been hard to watch their careers over the last 20, 30 years, seeing them get worn out, for want of a better description, of the teaching industry. So I don't regret it. I do not regret it. Anyway, enough rattling on here. I won't make a decision on this lace yet because I want to see how embellished this gets, because this could get quite, you know, full on thick, or it might be quite delicate. Gosh, I've got fabric everywhere. I'm just reaching over to my box of favourite threads, which seem to be just around my desk. There's so many colours here that sort of work with it. And I've just picked up this wool. And I'm thinking of putting some of this wool in to start it with the thickness of it. I'm thinking I like that. So let's get started. We'll try and work out some of the plans for the stitches with you. Now, looking at this piece in the center, there's an opportunity to do something right in the middle there, and then there's this as well. The other thing I need to take into account, there is shading there. See how it's a little bit darker? Let me bring that up to the camera. See how it's a little bit darker in here? There's an opportunity to stitch in there and around this edge with something that's a little bit heavier in tone. I think I'll do something bead-wise on the ends there. That'd be a pretty easy. As for this through here, just not sure. I'm wondering if I could put some lace in there. Like we give it a throat of lace. Be a case of finding something that suited the colour tone, some shape. I think in the meantime, I might have to go hunting for some lace. I then could do something quite extravagant around the top of that little trumpet. We'll call that the trumpet. So the more you look into these types of prints, the more you see. So there's definitely an opportunity to do something up here. Like imagine that, all tiny seed beads, encrusted seed beads. Some lace coming up here. And then around this here beads, we then stitch just layers and layers of tonal stitching. Now this wool is variegated, but whether that's enough of a variegation, I don't think so. So I might have to go looking for a sister to it. What is in here that is a little bit darker? So the other thing is we could do something with ribbon too. Maybe that trumpet could be, oh, there's an idea, ribbon embroidery. This is not the colour I'd use. I'd probably find a cream, but what we could do is lay down some ribbon in there. Oh, I like that idea. All right, I'm going to stop the video. We're at 42 minutes, so we've still got about 20 minutes. I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to try and find a cream of this. I'm going to try and find a darker version of this, and then we'll go from there. All right, guys, back in a minute. Hi, guys, I'm back. Oh, my goodness. You know, when you go to a section of your craft room and it's like you fall down a rabbit hole. I got to that thread stand I've got, and I just spotted all these threads that I've forgotten about, and oh, my goodness. I didn't think I was ever going to make it back, but I did. I dragged myself away from it. Now, I went looking for ribbons that could be used in this project, and I found plenty of pinks. Like, oh, they don't even look right when you put it with the piece. No, they're not right. Isn't colour amazing? So they're no good. As for cream, I don't have a lot of cream in here. I think it's because I used a heap of it on Percy the peacock. All that's really left are these here. Let's have a look at them. Now I do have a bag of random, I think there's something in there, random threads that I picked up from Melanie, the purveyor of textiles. See, that's too thick. The colour is really good, but I think I need it thinner. That's probably a 6mm thread. I really need this size. Then maybe I do layers of colour. What would that be? Probably 4mm. That's a good colour, but I might just keep that guy out. Put this one away. Now let's just run our nose through this bag. It's a bit of a mess. I haven't had a chance to sort it, but I'm just going to very carefully have a look in here, because there might be, so there's satin ribbon. It's too shiny. You probably can't see the shimmer. I sort of want a silk. Here we go. Look at this. That's pretty good. And there's a thicker one there. which is the satin. I'm going to just take that guy out. It's not much of it, but I think it would be enough to do the job. Oh, there's another one. That's a slightly paler. Oh yeah, that's what we want. Okay. I really need to sort this before it gets in more mess. Okay. So, there you go. I've got two colours. They're slightly different, which is good because that's going to give us a little bit of movement. Now, I have a wool on my needle here. I really should finish what I was going to do. Wools. I did find a darker wool in here. This one here. It has potential, but I don't know. I might end up going a green to get that shading in there. I could even go a purpley colour, like a burgundy. I don't know. I'm not going to make a decision on that yet until I get to even that tone. You know, you don't have to stay true to the fabric. I wonder if I put a layer of beads in there, what would it look like if I do pistol stitch just below the bead line? That would be pretty cute. So come back down here and I do little pistol stitches up to that circular shape. Just going to jump over a little bit. I don't want them to look too uniformed in a row. So sometimes to stop that happening, if you go further along, and I can see that my thread is going quite pale. So I might as well take advantage of that colour change. Oh, goodness sakes, now I can't thread the needle. Gotcha. So I'm going to scoot along, do a knot at the top, and start building up all of the stitches. Yeah, it's getting really pale. So when's it going to change? Okay, so I've got a little bit more pale thread coming, so I can get at least another one up the top there. I'm going to try and sneak another one out. It's getting a bit short, but I think you get the general idea. It's going to be a line of pistol stitches lit, and the knot is sitting just below the artwork, so you can see that there. So I still now have an opportunity to do something on all those little bobbles around the top. So that's the plan. I've run out of length, so that's a definite. I can go ahead and do that. Now, as for the red, in the previous panel, I just used this, and the first thing I did was outline it all. And it really was quite striking. How many threads did I use to do it? But can't remember. I think it's only 2. Yeah, 2. So I will break down a piece of that. So stranded cotton 498, one of my favourites. If you're gathering threads because you're new to this whole world of stitching, grab that colour. You'll be surprised at how often it pops up in projects. It's just a great deep red. It's not that fire engine red. It's just a really, really nice colour. Now what I might do is I'm going to do, will I do satin stitch? Not satin stitch. Why do I always say that? Stem stitch. Or do I do back stitch? Or do I do split stitch? Oh, for goodness sakes. Do I do chain stitch? Chain stitch would be rather tricky. What if I did chain stitch around the outer edge? Sorry guys, heading off on a tangent. I'm going to do satin stitch because it gives you a little bit of thickness, and I like the rolled edge effect that it gives you. Not satin stitch. God, don't I do that all the time? It's stem stitch. I used to hate it as a kid because it was like the go-to stitch on doilies. I used to do a lot of fancy work doilies. They were quite cheap to buy, and you get little kits, and people would gift me little kits. It was just a good birthday or Christmas present for Corrine. Give her something to stitch when I was a little girl. I used to hate stem stitch. I didn't like satin stitch much either, mind you, because I wasn't neat enough. And my grandmother would be always, she has that groan. They'd come and visit for a week or so to the farm, and Grandad would help around the farm. When they were retired, this was. Grandad had serviced the windmill. Grandma would sit at the kitchen table, and she'd do everything from peeling the veggies for dinner or just doing some crocheting or knitting that she was working on, but we would always convince her to make some clothes for us. So Mum and I would have fabrics and patterns ready and put Grandma straight to work. So, and I'd always be assisting somehow, getting in the way. And if I was doing fancy work, she'd make that sound as I show her my fancy work. She'd never say it was terrible, but there was a tone, a little tone. And my mum and I used to joke all the time about it because she heard it as a little girl. And you knew your stem stitch or your satin stitch was not quite to standard. She was a judge at the local shows too in the district for fancy work. So what hope did I have? What hope did I have? Okay. So I think you get the general gist. I'm going to outline those petals. Oh, don't you not in that. All right, so that's a definite. I can go ahead and do that. That pistol stitch will work a treat. Now, let's have a look at this silk ribbon. I might lay down a few of the dark pieces first, and that'll give, see there's shading? See if I bring it up. See how that drifts a little bit there? So if we lay the darker one there and the lighter one on the other side, technically it should look pretty darn good. How's that for confidence? So I'm just using the same needle because the eye on this needle's pretty generous, so I can get away with. Now I know you probably should not ribbons, but then I don't know, you watch some YouTube videos, because I'm new to this, I'm not a ribbon embroiderer by any means. You watch some and they knot, and then you watch the next one and you don't knot. You stitch within itself to get you started. So it's very confusing. So I sort of decide, well, I'm going to do what I want. So I'm just going to lay down that stitch. It has twisted and I don't think I want that twist, so I'm just going to fiddle with it to get it. Get it to lay flat. And I can't get the twist out because my fabric is so thick keep it loosish. I think it will be fine. Now I'm going to come up next to it so that I use as little of the ribbon as possible. And I'm going to... The twist actually looks pretty good. It's giving it movement. So once again, back down through. Oh yeah. Can you see that? There's 2 stitches there. Oh, I like that. So I'm now going to come up here. And drop a stitch back in there. Oh, I love how you get this movement within ribbon embroidery. I think it's the light bouncing around on the silk, to be honest. Oh, yeah. Got plenty of ribbon here, so I'm going to go right across, and then I'll come back with the paler ribbon, but focusing just on that one side. My ribbon's starting to get a bit squished. I think the secret to it is you don't cut such a big piece, because the more it drags through fabric, and I've got a bit here, the more it gets squished up, and you lose that ability to have that nice broad stroke of ribbon. If you are interested in ribbon embroidery, just put it into YouTube, and there's some fantastic tutorials around. Really, really, really clever people out there. There's a heap of books too, and I've got a heap of them. And I look through them, I think, oh, I'd love to try that, but it becomes a bit too overwhelming. I can't decide on a project, and I close the book and back into the cupboard it goes. I need to find a ribbon embroiderer and go and do a class, because then you hear the tricks to it, you know. There's only so much you can get out of a book, but when you're with a teacher, you sort of get a bit better feel for the process and why the work looks so gorgeous, you know. Oh, I like that. That's coming up really well. I'm going to do one more stitch because I believe I've got just enough ribbon to do it. Might as well use it. And then we'll have a look at the other colour. Do we need it? Do I need it? Would it even be noticeable, the transition? I don't think it will. Oh, that's the same colour. Oh, goodness me. This one. I don't know. I don't think I need it, to be honest. There's so much shimmer going on. I will put a little bit in, but only a couple stitches. I don't want to go crazy. Got to get it undone. It's like it's been knotted through the centre. Probably just a little bit. Probably don't need it, and probably anyone looking at the piece will never even notice that I've done it. It's that borderline, do you do it or do you not? Is it worth using your materials? I can hear an owl. Oh, goodness sakes. It's not quite sunrise yet. And I can hear an owl in the distance. Okay, so I'm just going to lay down this one. Yeah, I like it. I'm glad I did it. If anything, because I'd used such a big piece of that first colour, it's quite flat over this side because the ribbon was starting to get distressed going through all of those different layers. So it's helped to bulk it up a little bit on that one side. And because I'm just skipping across the entire piece again with this paler one, you can see the other ribbon below it. So it does really look like light is bouncing through. I'm going to do one more because I just can't stop. You know what would look really cute is... No, I'm not going to do it. I was thinking up those bobbles at the top there. Up here could be a lazy daisy in the ribbon. But I think you'd lose the texture of that section of the flower. I think we can come up with something better up there. Don't know what. Probably a bead, but maybe, yeah. That looks really good. It's got quite a three-dimensional feel about it. Okay, guys. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm pleased I did that ribbon embroidery because I sort of need that into position so that all of this sort of marries around it. So now I can go back to my wool and finish doing across there with lots and lots of layers. I've got to go on the hunt for a darker colour that can go in there. Maybe it has to be one of these sorts of tones. Let me get my hand in there, see what this looks like. So it's a bit rusty. Greens. There was a brown in there. Like I'm supposed to be saying goodbye, but I'm sidetracked. See, there's a brown. Maybe a little bit of that, yeah. And then if I lay a little bit of that in amongst this as well, it'll sort of feel like it's meant to be together. I think it's going to be a combination of those two. Unless I find a better colour, which I don't think I will. Not in the wools anyway. See that there? That's real shiny. Just thinking about those. Yeah, no. I want to bring lace in. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. We've decided on that. I'm going to have that and that. So maybe not that. I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Isn't it fun? Okay. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to leave it at that, and I will be back in the next video. Not sure when it'll appear. It won't be tomorrow because there's so many projects going on. It'll just be revisiting the project. Like I said, if you want to join along, the playlist to make the bag, the steps will be in the description below. You can have a look at Scrappy Rabbit using the French General fabrics if that's something that catches your eye. I'll put a photo of Scrappy Rabbit at the end of the video. And there was another project I mentioned too that I was going to link below, and it's gone. It's out of my head. Anyway, it's all good. Oh yeah, it was the postcard wrap using the antique fabrics that I picked up in Paris. All right, guys, I will leave you in peace, and we'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now. Hello, everyone. I'm back. Well, what happened was I lined up all my threads that we went through to take a photo for the thumbnail for the YouTube video. And I started thinking about this gap here that is where we want to put some lace, and I thought, oh, do I go and choose it now? The video's finished. So I thought I'll just go over and I'll pick up some lace that can be just used in the photograph. And this was the first piece I picked up. And I was looking at this. See this shape? I really feel that one of those could be worked into the top of this piece. And see how it's got those little round nodules? It sort of reminded me of all this. So I'm going to add to the top of that this little morsel right there. So I thought I'd better turn the video on, because you're wondering what the hang has she done, and I can then use that piece of lace in the photograph. As for what's going to go down here, well, maybe I should put that piece of lace over here for my photo. And then this can be utilised in the project somewhere. There you go. All right, so now I can zoom in and get the picture, and that'll be the thumbnail for the project. Okay. All right, guys, look after yourselves, and I'm definitely going this time. Bye for now.